What's going on, guys? Cleepus Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the BLU View 2. I'm going to be going over everything you need to know about this phone to help you decide if it's right for you. So let's get into it. This phone has a 5.5-inch LCD display with a resolution of 720p, a PPI of 293, and an aspect ratio of 18:9. Right now, I have the brightness at 100%, and I would say it looks pretty decent. We got the front-facing camera right here on the bezel, and this camera is 8 megapixels. The back is made of a matte material that occasionally does pick up a fingerprint or two, but for the most part, it's pretty good about that and doesn't really get that dirty, which is good for keeping your phone clean. You won't have to worry nearly as much as you would with a phone that has a more glossy finish. The bezels on this phone are pretty thick, and it does look more cheap and outdated. But at the same time, the design is decently thin, so it's really comfortable to hold in your hand and carry in your pocket. So if you're looking for a more compact device, this is going to be a benefit. For storage, this phone has 32 gigabytes of internal storage with microSD card expansion, and for the price range, that's actually really impressive. This phone is probably the most entry level you're going to get. In most phones, if not pretty much every one I've seen in this price range, only has 16 gigabytes of internal storage. So is 32 gigabytes a lot in and of itself? No, it's really not. But compared to pretty much every other phone in its price range, this is really impressive because most of the other ones don't have this much storage. And in addition to that, with the microSD card, you can put all your photos and videos on that, so you get even more room for other things like apps. For the average user, as long as you're careful and pay a little attention to what you're putting on your phone, you should have plenty of space for everything you need. Now, there's no wireless charging with this phone, and there's also no fingerprint scanner or face unlock, which is a disappointment to me, because I like to have at least one of those features. With this phone, you're gonna have to put a pin or a pattern or a password on it to unlock it, and that is pretty inconvenient when you're doing something and can only use one hand, for example. That can be really annoying. And it's nice to have something like face unlock or a fingerprint scanner so you can unlock your phone a lot faster. And unfortunately, this phone doesn't have any of that. So if you are looking for those features, you might want to look at different devices because this phone has none of it. But if you're not concerned with a fingerprint scanner or face unlock and are perfectly fine using a PIN or a password or even a pattern, then it's not going to be a big deal. So for the camera setup, we only have one rear camera, and this camera is 13 megapixels. So as far as features go, if you're looking for anything fancy, you are going to be disappointed because this phone has pretty much the minimum features possible. Basically just regular camera functions in video. There's not even portrait mode on this phone. But that being said, if you're a more casual user of the camera, but still want to take the occasional nice looking picture, then this phone is actually going to be pretty good with a 13 megapixel camera. Although there aren't very many super nice features, this phone takes surprisingly good pictures for what it is. Take a look at this. This is a photo taken with the rear camera of the phone, and for what it is, it's actually a really nice looking photo. Now, the lighting isn't the greatest. This photo was taken in broad daylight with a lot of sun, and it still looks a little dark, but at the same time, the quality of the image itself is actually really decent and a lot better than what you might expect from a phone at this level. The main thing I was really looking for when I was taking this picture is some sort of haze, because lots of the entry-level phones tend to have something like that. But to my surprise, the colors actually do look pretty good, and the quality of the image itself is decent. So again, if you're a more frequent user of the camera and like the nice features like portrait mode, maybe an ultra wide or macro camera too, then you're going to be disappointed with this phone, and you should look at other devices because this phone is really featureless as far as the camera and pretty much everything goes. But if you're a more casual user, but you still like to take nice pictures every now and then, then this phone's camera is actually gonna be pretty good for you because surprisingly, the pictures it takes are really not bad at all. This phone can shoot in qualities up to 1080p in both the rear and front cameras. Now keep in mind that although you can shoot video in 1080p on this phone, you can only view it on the device in 720p because that's the resolution of the display. In addition to that, the quality of the video is not really that good on this phone. If you're only shooting videos for something like Snapchat, where the quality really doesn't matter, then it's gonna be okay. But if you want to shoot videos for anything else, then you're probably going to be disappointed. Internally, this phone is getting 2 GB of RAM with the MediaTek Helio A22 processor. I ran a Geekbench 5 benchmark test on this phone and it came back with a single core score of 144 and a multi-core score of 510. Under normal circumstances, I would not be very impressed by these numbers, but there are actually lots of phones out there that are more expensive than this, and I mean much more expensive than this, that have far weaker processors. For example, this phone actually has more processing power than the Samsung Galaxy A02s by just a small margin, but still, it actually is impressive that this phone can compete with phones that are about 3 times its price, sometimes even more. And in addition to that, even though the processing power isn't great by any means, I've still had no performance issues with this phone for the time that I've been using it. Now the battery for this phone is a little bit different than you might expect. This phone has a 2920 milliamp hour battery, and this battery is actually removable. When you get the phone in the box, the battery is actually disconnected from the phone and you have to put it in before you start the device up. In order to remove the battery, you're going to want to open it by this tab right here. And this is going to detach the back from the phone. And then you'll be able to access the battery. I thought that was kind of interesting. Nowadays, it's not too common to see a smartphone with a detachable battery. It doesn't make too much of a difference, but it's still interesting all the same. Now, as far as the size of this battery goes, it's not too big. It's at least bigger than the iPhone 12 that has a 2815 milliamp hour battery, but that's not saying much because the iPhone 12 is known to have a pretty small battery. This phone's battery life is okay, but if you have a more mobile lifestyle and don't get to charge your phone all day, but still have to use it a lot throughout the day, you're probably gonna run into some problems. The battery of this phone is probably gonna be a bit of an inconvenience for you because although it will have enough life to get through the day, typically, it will drain a lot faster if you're using it more heavily. The other thing to consider about phones with small batteries like this one is the longevity. Over time, all batteries degrade, and when a battery is this small, you're gonna notice it a lot quicker than you would with a phone that has a much larger battery. So this phone is not gonna have the longevity that others do, and you'll have to replace it a lot sooner. So if you prefer to get one phone and keep it for as long as you can, this phone's battery will be a drawback for that. So now that we've gone over some of the specs of the phone, let's take a look at the hardware. So we don't have anything on the left side here. On the right side, we have our volume keys and our power button. And these buttons are honestly pretty flimsy. They're a little bit tough to press. And I feel like over time, with prolonged use, they're just gonna get worse. So that's something to be aware of. On the top of the phone, we have a 3.5mm headphone jack, which is pretty nice. Even in low-end phones, manufacturers have been doing away with headphone jacks, so it is nice to get one in this phone. On the bottom here is a USB-C port, which honestly, I was surprised. I wasn't expecting an entry-level phone like this to have USB-C. A lot of the time, really low-end phones have micro USB instead, so it's nice to see that this phone does in fact have USB-C. On the back, we have a camera setup and the flash. There's a blue logo right here. And then at the bottom here, we have our speaker as well as a track phone logo right here. Overall, the materials of this phone don't really feel very high quality. It feels more or less like cheap plastic, and the detachable back really doesn't help matters. Having moving parts like that just add to the cheap feel and make it feel more breakable. And I'm really not a big fan of the buttons. These buttons are a little bit difficult to press at times, and they feel really flimsy. It really does get me concerned about the longevity of the phone. But that being said, I do like the texture of the material on the back. It's nice and smooth and comfortable to hold in your hand, and the matte finish makes it harder for fingerprints to show up. So in conclusion, my final thoughts about the BLU View 2. For what it is, an extremely affordable entry-level phone, it's really not bad. I'm not crazy about the design, but at the same time, I have seen much worse, and I would say the strongest points of this phone are the processor and the camera. The rear camera does take some pretty decent pictures, and compared to the pictures taken by other entry-level phones, they're actually pretty impressive. In addition to that, the processor, while not being very strong by normal standards, is stronger than a lot of phones that are more expensive than it, so you are getting a decent deal there. If you're looking for a phone to do high performance activities on, like heavy gaming, in video editing, or even just intense web browsing and social media use, then you're probably going to be disappointed. But if you're just doing basic activities with this phone, then the processor is going to be perfect for that sort of thing. The other thing I like about this phone is the storage. Usually at this level, you only see 16 gigabytes, and 32 is a little bit harder to come by. So 32 gigabytes of internal storage with microSD card expansion is not bad at all. Overall, if you're looking for an entry-level phone to do basic activities on and take the occasional nice picture or two, the BLU View 2 is going to be a good option for that. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope you found this information useful as well. Don't forget to leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next video.